Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. So, I was going to do the next book in the Dame for Visa series, but that's on hold in the library, and I'm not going to be able to get a hold of a physical copy of the book, and also we've had major snowfall around here, so yeah, at some point I'll be able to get to that. But in the meantime, have my emergency replacement, which is La Petite Sirène from Avec des Jeux tout en couleur, album multi-éducatif Nathan Disney, which, pardon my French accent, it's not very good, but you're just going to have to live with it, anyone who's watching who actually, speaks French. So my parents got me this book years and years and years ago because when The Little Mermaid came out, I was, 7, and it was super huge. I mean, first of all, The Little Mermaid, Disney's Little Mermaid, was, of course, super huge at the time. It holds a very special place in history as the movie that began the so-called Disney Renaissance. It was the movie that launched Disney out of the doldrums it had been in since, probably actually in some ways since Sleeping Beauty, because don't forget Sleeping Beauty back at the end of the 50s, Sleeping Beauty basically nearly bankrupted Disney. They threw everything into it, and that's why Disney Sleeping Beauty, which is scored with Tchaikovsky's ballet, which is, it's Tchaikovsky, so what do you have to complain about? But it is gorgeous and stylized, and, everything there is absolutely stunning, especially when you have to remember that this predates any ability whatsoever to use computers, that we're talking about, something that's in development in the 1950s. You're talking about something that every single tiny bit of this was basically being done by a human being drawing it. And Disney was running a sweatshop in its animation studios. Everybody knows this. It was not the world's best employer, and many aspects of Disney remain not the world's best employer, but when that crashed and burned in theaters, Disney lost a lot of money. And over the following years, one of the reasons why movies like 101 Dalmatians have such an interesting, sketchy style, which, it's an interesting style, it's so lovely to look at and everything, but the reason they were doing that was because it allowed them to sort of, deal with some things around the edges. The reason why they had so many pieces of animation that they sort of traced over top, that they said, well, sure, we'll just use this skirt animation, this dancing animation, and we'll just sort of, just match it frame by frame into this new thing, is because they needed to save money. And people who are going to complain about that are people who don't really care about how absolutely excellent some of the movies Disney released during those years anyways. But the point is that The Little Mermaid was huge. I mean, it has a great score, it has fantastic animation, it is, in my opinion, a far better adaptation of, it's far better than the original Little Mermaid, which I have strong objections to. I am not Hans Christian Andersen's biggest fan, I'll be honest with you. But anyways, so my parents got me this because they wanted me to learn French, and they thought that if they gave me a French version of something like this, that it would make it more palatable and easier to learn, because of course I know all the characters, I know the story, so I don't need to figure out what's going on. Because I know what's going on, I can just sort of look at the words and absorb stuff. However, there are things, and the thing was that I loved this because it was Little Mermaid, But that was about it. This is, in fact, an extremely silly, problematic book on a couple of different fronts. Let's cut to this. Now, this is a scene that, if you've seen the movie, first of all, you will already notice that Eric is wearing boots, which, while that makes Scuttle trying to listen for a pulse in the foot even dumber than in the movie where he's got bare feet, there's an extra problem here. And it is, they've renamed Scuttle Eureka, which I assume has to do with however localization works and whatever the French word or words for scuttle may be, probably weren't appropriate to the character. But Scuttle is, is le cœur ne bat pas en Eric penché sur le bot d'Eric, that his heart isn't beating, which, translation can be spotty. J'écoute encore, non, aussi mort qu'un frigozoid. Now, first of all, there is no line in the English version where he says, I'll listen some more, and no, he's dead as a something. But I looked at frigozoid and I thought, when I reopened this recently, dipping into my memories of this, and he says that, and I looked at that and I said, what the heck is frigozoid? That must be some kind of French localization thing, right? Because localization, is a complex issue because, of course, translation is a complex issue. You're not merely translating words. Sometimes you're translating metaphors or what have you. I went Googling frigozoid on the internet, and it turns out that frigozoid is in the original script. In the original script, if you've seen the movie, you will know that there is a scene, spoilers, for a movie that came out in 1989. There's a scene in which Scuttle tells Ariel that Ariel has found a fork and a pipe, and Ariel hands him the fork and he calls it, this is a dingle hopper, he says. Humans use this to straighten their hair out. And for the rest of the movie, Ariel thinks that forks are combs and uses a fork as a comb for the rest of the movie for solid comedic effect. Then Scuttle says that the pipe is a snarfblatt and a musical instrument. It turns out that in the script there is a third item. She finds a shoe which Scuttle identifies as a frigozoid, or however he was supposed to pronounce it. And that got cut, clearly. But it isn't cut in this, which is doubly confusing for a reason that I will get to in a moment. But what this means is that somebody handed them the script, and they had not seen the movie. They were just working from the script when they made this. Which means that there are pieces of text that really do not match what was in the original script in sort of even in intent. And the other reason why this frigozoid issue is a problem is because the book opens here with Ariel being yelled at by King Triton. Here we are. La Petite Sirène est la fille de Triton, le roi de l'océan, pardon me, like I said, my French is terrible. So her name is Ariel, she's 16, with a beautiful voice, she loves to explore sunken ships, and she wants to go, and look into the world of humans, which is so strange and interesting, and we have here basically, and it's not her father's preference, and he tells her, you are not allowed to go to the surface, understand? And that's how this starts. It just starts right there. We don't have Scuttle talking about this. And so this whole thing with the frigozoid, this is just nonsense being thrown at the reader. A child who had seen the movie, whether in French or in English, is going to look at that and will have no idea what's going on. This is terrible. Now I'm going to note a side issue. Some of you may notice the large amount of colored pencils or pencil crayons or whatever you call them. I know this is something that varies from region to region. That I've scribbled onto Ariel's mouth, that I've filled her eyes in with blue pen, and that has to do with the fact that when I was a child, I was very, very offended at the fact that her hair was such a dull red and her lips were such a dull red that I felt that I absolutely had to scribble it all in. Now, this being a children's educational thing, it also has, questions and exercises and games at the end for increasing the intellectual who's it of kids. And I remember being bothered by Je nombre quatre, the fourth one, which is that Triton's daughters all really resemble themselves. Can you find Ariel in the group? And of course, first of all, Ariel's the only one with her hair not, tied away, but also, those don't look anything like the daughters of Triton from the movie, who have different colored tails and muchly different colored hair. None of them looks like Aquata, Andrina, Adela, Alana, and, whatever the other one is. It's been far too long since I've listened to the introductory song for them. Anyways, so it's one of these weird things where I really, really loved this book as a kid, but I loved it in the same way that people who are big fans of Star Wars will love a third-rate knockoff lunchbox. It's not because it's great Star Wars anything, it's just I've got Chewbacca on my lunchbox. So in this case, I'm looking at this and I'm loving it because it's the movie that was my favoritist movie ever at the time. I got older and I realized that I like other movies better than this one, but Ursula the Sea Witch still is like one of my favorite things of all time ever. You can keep whatever villains that you love. Ursula is my darling. Anyway, so this is the last page of the actual story before we get to the puzzles and stuff. As you can see, my desperate need to draw on things did not stop there, and I insisted on adding a necklace and what were ostensibly supposed to be sparkles to her dress. And you can see in the background this little teeny tiny Triton in the background, which, there's a lot here that's being done on the cheap, but also, you have this narration which doesn't match the picture that we're looking at, which is just kind of problem, because it's a problem, because, if you're going to say that in the presence of all of the creatures of the sea, you should probably have more than just Triton and a seagull. Because you'll notice we can't even see Sebastian, and Sebastian should really be there. Or Flounder. We can't see Flounder. We can't see anybody. Anyway, so this is a weird one, but it's kind of heavy on the nostalgia for me, because this sort of comes at that moment in my life when I was all about The Little Mermaid. I did not spend any time at seashores or lakesides or anything else to do that thing that 1,000,001 girls do, because you look for it, you can find them, people talking about all of those women talking about all those times as young girls that they would sort of get up into the surf and try to, sing part of your world to align the final line of it with, a big splash behind them that never happened, because The Little Mermaid is animation and not real life, where the ocean does not in fact move to complement when you're trying to sing a song. Yeah, so there we go. The grand romantic ending of the story of Ariel and Eric has a seagull plastered all over the bottom. So that's all I have to say about this book, and I will see you all next week.